Last year's Sonic Mania took a lot of people by surprise with its perfect execution of the original Sonic formula. With its beautiful presentation, tight gameplay, great soundtrack, and excellent level design, Sonic Mania hit all the right marks and took the top spot as my favorite game of 2017. And for everyone else, well, it reminded people that yes, the original Sonic was always great. So when Sonic Mania Plus was announced earlier this year, I was pretty excited. This updated version of the game would finally receive a proper retail release with high quality packaging, complete with a reversible cover and a full color art book. It's a proper premium release. But there's a lot more to Plus than just this retail version. Since the game's completion, the development team has been hard at work on implementing all sorts of new features into the game, adding new content, while also fixing up bugs and polishing up any remaining rough edges. And if you own the base game digitally, this extra content will run you just $5. Even better, if you're just looking for fixes and improvements, all of these things are available for free in the related patch. So as a huge fan of Sonic Mania, I just couldn't resist the urge to produce one more video on the game. Today then, we're going to explore many of these improvements and changes made to the game across multiple platforms, while checking out some of its new content. We're also going to find out if the latest version of the game solves some of the technical snafus we pointed out originally. In its original form, for instance, the Switch version exhibited noticeable slowdown in the bonus stages, while the home button was often unresponsive. Has all of this been corrected? And what about Xbox One X support? Does it even matter for a pixel art game like Sonic? Let's find out. Whether you've opted for Sonic Mania Plus, or are simply playing the patched version of Sonic Mania, the first thing you'll notice is a completely overhauled UI. The nice looking but simple menu system of the original game has been entirely replaced by this gorgeous selection of options with associated animated artwork on the left hand side of the screen. If you're using the DLC or playing the retail version of the game then, a new Encore mode option appears on the main menu as well, and this is where the bulk of the new features make an appearance. Encore mode is basically a remixed version of the original Sonic Mania. For starters, every stage has received an entirely new color palette. Green Hill Zone now takes place at dusk, for instance. This is one of my favorite additions as it has a transformative effect on the overall feel and atmosphere of each stage. By swapping the color palette around, well-worn stages suddenly feel fresh again. You can even toggle between the two zone variations in time trial mode if you like. But the changes don't stop there. The new level layouts have all been tweaked and changed as well. Additional challenges have been added, spikes and enemies repositioned, secret stage rings moved around, and a lot more. Another great addition is the new bonus stage. When you pass through a checkpoint with 50 rings, the sparkling halo appears as usual. In the original Mania, however, this would trigger the Blue Sphere minigame, which a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with. But in Encore mode, you get this slick pinball table instead. The physics are a little wonky in spots, but it's a nice little addition to the game. You can jump in, grab an item or two, and jump back out if you choose, or try to make your way to the top via the scrolling playfield. It helps preserve the game's flow in a way that Blue Sphere does not. Beyond that, if you obtain all the Blue Sphere medallions in Mania mode, the pinball minigame replaces it when passing through a signpost. A nice touch. Encore mode also introduces a completely new selection of 3D bonus stages, which are a lot more challenging than the base game. And speaking of the 3D bonus stages, let's talk about that Switch version. As I suggested earlier, the original release looked like this. Even in the simplest initial 3D stage in the game, the frame rate wasn't entirely stable on the Switch, with dips to around 50 FPS on average. It was always playable, but it felt a little unpolished. So what about the new version then? Well, I'm happy to report that it's been fixed entirely. Tantalus, the studio responsible for porting Sonic Mania to the Switch, has managed to solve all performance-related issues, and now bonus stages operate at a locked 60 frames per second, as they should. This also applies to the portable mode. Here's some direct feed capture of the game running in portable mode, showcasing the same fluid frame rate. This bonus stage really highlights the unique nature of Sonic Mania's underlying retro engine. Unlike your typical modern game, Sonic Mania relies almost entirely on a software renderer. The GPU is used primarily to render the pixel output and display the various CRT filters, but that's really it. According to Christian over on Sonic Retro, the 3D renderer used throughout the game can support both triangles and quads. And beyond that, all math operations are fixed point rather than floating point, and there's no Z buffer. It's a unique approach to rendering in the modern era, but this is one of the key reasons why the game feels so authentic, I believe. It also might explain the battery life on Switch. Compared to most other games in the platform, Sonic Mania can last a long time in portable mode, delivering more than 6 hours of battery life. The low GPU usage is no doubt responsible for this increased battery life. And while we're talking about the Switch, it's also worth noting that the sluggish home button response bug evident in the original release has been fully corrected here as well. And last but not least, the Switch OS option for saving video is now available in Sonic Mania. Simply press and hold the screenshot button, and you can save a short little clip to your memory card. Of course, the video is only going to be 30 frames per second, but still, it's a nice feature. At this point, all the flaws in the original Switch version have been polished up for all owners of the game. But what else can you expect from Plus? How about some new stages? Well, okay, this is a partial edition. Firstly, when starting up Encore mode, players are now given the opportunity to play the first half of Sonic the Hedgehog 3's Angel Island Zone, Act 1, complete with some unique changes. It's only half of Act 1, but there's some interesting changes here nonetheless. The parallax background graphics, for instance, only display the forested area in this version, whereas on a Genesis you could go above the tree line. Secondly, these swinging ropes now feature smooth scrolling and animation in comparison to the original game. This small slice of Angel Island is a tiny addition, sure, but it's a nice touch. Secondly, remember Mirage Saloon? When playing as Sonic or Tails in the original game, the first act was relegated to a plane sequence similar to Sonic 2. Knuckles, however, has access to an alternative Act 1. Now in Encore mode, Act 1 is available for everyone to play, with a revised layout that includes some additions from the original plane segment as well. It almost feels like an entirely new stage. Another key addition are the new characters. Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel have been introduced across every game mode, and they're an excellent choice. These characters date back to an early 90s Sonic game known as Sega's Sonic the Hedgehog, which was an arcade trackball title. Mighty, of course, also showed up in Knuckles Chaotix years later on the 32X. Once you dive into the game then, Mighty basically plays like Sonic, but with permanent bubble shield. Double tap the jump button to ground pound basically. It feels great, and in Encore mode, some new passages have been introduced to take advantage of this feature. Ray, however, is one of the best additions to the game. On the ground, he controls a lot like Sonic, but take to the skies and a new gliding mechanic is available. It feels like the cape gliding feature in Super Mario World, but with increased momentum and more air control. I love all the new animations created for Ray as well. The little drip on his head at the start of Chemical Plant Zone, or the way he swings across the bars in Flying Battery. It's really interesting to see him in a side-scrolling Sonic game as well. There's very little artwork out there for Ray prior to this game. Sega really never used him in this capacity. Thus, the game's art director, Tom Fry, had to reimagine the character in a style that fits the game, and it works really well. They even went through and crafted 3D models of both characters for use in the bonus stages. Beyond this, when playing in Encore mode, an entirely new live system has been introduced. Rather than selecting one character and playing with a fixed number of lives, you now collect characters. That means all 5 playable characters are selectable during gameplay, and upon death, the game instantly warps you back to the nearest checkpoint. The music doesn't even stop when this happens either. 2 characters are always visible on screen, with the second character controlled by the computer, and pressing Y, X, or triangle on your controller, depending on platform, allows you to swap between the 2 active characters. Certain power-ups also have this effect. This is effectively an elegant solution to the idea of Sonic Heroes, a way to introduce all characters into a single stage without bogging down the core gameplay. It's a great way to encourage additional exploration in the game world, and by the way, there's now a new option to disable the time limit if you choose. Other touch-ups include new stage transitions across the entire game. In its original form, certain stages featured transitions between zones similar to Sonic 3, but this did not apply to every stage. Now with the latest patch, every single zone features a new transitional animation. It's a small thing, sure, but it helps create a more cohesive overall gameplay experience. My favorite addition has to be the addition of these gliders at the end of Flying Battery Zone. It's a fun little homage to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Master System and Game Gear. Neat. There's a ton of other details hidden within as well, both big and small. The ice blocks in Press Garden, for instance, now feature animation with freezing characters and eyes darting left and right. The Metal Sonic fight halfway through the game has been improved as well. The first form requires fewer overall hits, the second run is shorter, and the final portion has been redesigned entirely. In its original incarnation, a spike wall would basically follow the player while Metal Sonic attacks. In version 1.04, however, this has been replaced with Metal Sonic Kai from Knuckles Chaotix, only he's blue this time. Changes like this really help the game feel more polished than ever. And that extends to the long-awaited support for Xbox One X as well. Now you're probably thinking, why would this even matter in a game that uses lower resolution pixel art? Well, as was the case in the PS4 Pro version, rendering the game at 4K allows for sharper upscaling of the artwork. Pixels appear much sharper, and the CRT shaders are hugely improved as well. The CRT filters work by simulating the appearance of a phosphor screen, thus the more pixels, the better. Regardless of which version you play, however, there is actually a slight interpolation present here. The artwork doesn't really scale 1:1 to fill the screen. It looks sharp enough, but if you look really closely, interpolation artifacts are visible. Not really a big deal though. It's most evident when looking at portable footage of the Switch version, but when using the actual Switch screen, it still looks great. Then there's the community aspect to think about. Sonic Mania is a project born from the community, and that same community is actively poring over Mania Plus right now. Case in point, one user going by the name Axonary over on Sonic Retro posted a video to his YouTube channel showcasing a wholly incomplete version of the Angel Island zone, beyond what was already included in the final version of Plus. Apparently, this uses the original scene file pulled right from the Sonic 3 and Knuckles Retro Engine port that Christian teased a few years ago. Personally, I love this sort of stuff and can't wait to see what else is buried in the game, and in fact the inclusion of an incomplete zone almost recalls some of the early Sonic 2 betas, making this release feel even more authentic in some weird way. Overall though, with all the changes and improvements, we're left with a super polished complete version of Sonic Mania, on a disc or a cart. As a longtime fan of the series then, it's interesting to reflect back on the game a year after its release. I've been playing the original Sonic titles for decades now, and I still find them to be a lot of fun. And while it's been comparatively less time for Mania, I think it's every bit as good now as it was when I first played it, and really I've continued to play it off and on over the last year as well. I believe that this is one of those games that will absolutely stand the test of time. It's a true classic that can stand proudly next to the 16-bit originals and even many of Nintendo's very best work during the Super NES era. The fact that it has sold so well since release suggests that I'm not alone in this either. Hopefully Sega realizes what they have here and gives these guys another shot to make something else. Whatever it is, I'll be there day one. But with that, I think I've discussed Sonic Mania enough for the time being, so thanks for sticking with me. And if you made it all the way to the end, I hope you enjoyed what I presume to be the final Sonic Mania video I'll be producing. If so then, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the bell up there to activate notifications, and follow us over on Twitter if you want to chat. But until next time, this is John signing off.